Mr. Speaker, Honorable Vice President, Honorable Chief Justice, Madam First Lady, Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, Ministers of Government, Honorable Members of Parliament, especially on my left, Your Worship, the Mayor of our municipality, the members of the diplomatic and consular corps, development partners, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. For this 60th anniversary of our nation's independence, I propose that we redesign the pathway of our endeavor to build a Sierra Leone that works for us all. Citizens should understand their rights, roles, and responsibilities. Why it is important to abide by rules and laws. What equality and leadership means. What public accountability entails. Why respect for diversity and national cohesion matters. And what it means to care for the environment. These are essential elements of a disciplined, inclusive, peaceful, progressive, and resilient society. So today I start with human capital development. Without inclusive and sustainable development, there can be no sustainable future for Sierra Leone. We cannot forever be blinded by cosmetic and short-term infrastructure and other tokens. We must create a society where every child is nurtured, nourished, protected, and equipped with the knowledge and skills required to realize his or her full potential. That is definitely beyond ethnicity. That is beyond party politics. After 60 years of independence, there can be no better tribute to our nation's founding fathers than a determination to operationalize meaningful human capital development in this country. Human capital development is not a slogan. It is inclusive. It is the key to achieving sustainable development with our own human resources, using homegrown solutions, empowering our local communities, enabling innovation, creativity, technology to bridge the development gap. COVID-19 and healthcare. Let me from the outset express our nation's gratitude to our healthcare workers, security personnel, public and private sector workers, civil society and community members, development partners, and everyone who has contributed to making us a low-risk country. We have achieved this as a result of proactive engagement, rigorous planning, central coordination, and thoughtful action that have been informed by data and expert advice. We have leveraged home-built technology solutions. We have also prioritized protecting lives and livelihoods and supported the most vulnerable of our citizens throughout our COVID-19 response. As we transition into vaccination stage, my government will take action to maintain healthcare financing at sustainable levels, continue to reduce maternal and under-5 mortality rates, recruit and train more healthcare staff, invest in quality mental care, healthcare, improve patient referral, transportation, blood services, upgrade medical and diagnostic equipment, and upgrade healthcare infrastructure. My government will work with partners to provide more hospital beds, train more midwives, and deliver advanced diagnostic services nationwide. Agriculture and food security. Consistent with the National Agricultural Transformation Program, my government remains committed to implementing programs and activities to boost rice self-sufficiency, crop diversification, livestock development, and sustainable forest and biodiversity management. My government will provide higher seed quality to achieve higher yields, establish new plantations of cash crops, and undertake comprehensive soil surveys to determine what crop type or livestock is better suited and what soil management techniques farmers may use. My government will support agriculture financing with $50 million United States dollars credit facility, e-vouchers for input and mechanization services, extension services, and make pre-positioned machine rings available to private sector and smallholder farmers across the country. A $54 million United States dollar investment in rice cultivation in the Rombe Swamp by Agro Elite LLC, and an additional $30 million secured from the Exim Bank to develop the water management and irrigation infrastructure to support rice cultivation around Tomaboom are already underway. Basic and senior secondary education. More than at any time in the nation's history, more children, including girls and other excluded child populations, are now in school at no expense to their parents or guardians. They are provided with free learning materials, more school facilities and infrastructure, school feeding facilities, and school buses. We have affirmed the right to education with our policy of radical inclusion that has irreversibly overturned the ban on pregnant girls, championed menstruation health, campaigned nationwide against early child marriage, and provided more support for students with disabilities. My government is working with partners to prioritize early childhood development, ECD, with a comprehensive ECD policy, curriculum framework, and ECD centers. We are also making available community learning facilities throughout the country. We are recruiting and training thousands of teachers and hiring and deploying more school inspectors to every district. training the future workforce of this nation and making it globally competitive is called raising the wage bill, then that is good for the future of the development of this nation. To accelerate long-term quality, government has developed and validated a basic education curriculum framework and subject syllabuses, and now developing the senior secondary curriculum framework. My government will revise the basic education policy, the 2004 Education Act, the West African Examination Council Act, and the Teacher Service Commission Act. Government has also developed other policies on radical inclusion, comprehensive safety, school feeding, school health, and village schools to further bolster our gains in the basic and senior secondary education sector. We will use more digitalization and ICT for more school and education center connectivity, learning assessments, education data, and for continuous professional development for teachers. My government has introduced and will continue to gradually expand guidance counseling, library and laboratory services, home economic centers, and adult and non-formal education. My travels to foreign nations and my engagement with partners have all borne fruit. Today, our education sector benefits from partnerships with Harvard University, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, Yale University, McMaster University, and the University of Sierra Leone. We have further partnerships with Global Partnership for Education, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, United Nations Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, West African Examination Council, WAEC, the Education Partnership Group, EdTech Hub, Georeference Infrastructure, and Demographic Data for Development, GRID, and NGO Consortium. We are one of the World Bank's accelerator countries for human capital development. My government will make good use of such valuable partnerships to continue to develop this country. My government will begin the construction of the University of Kano this year. My government will begin the construction of the University of Kano this year. Invest more in skills development at the National Apprenticeship Scheme and ensure more rigor in higher education. All these interventions are what we mean by education for development. Within a decade, the impact of these investments will be evident. Science, technology, and innovation. When I instituted the first ever Directorate of Science, Technology, and Innovation, DSTI, in the Office of the President, I recognized the immense value of science and technology to help solve some of our nation's challenges, support governance, drive development with innovation, and support the shaping of the future of this nation. Our development of homegrown technology solutions during our COVID-19 fight, our national financial data infrastructure, and our use of technology to strengthen the entrepreneurial ecosystem and augment communications and operations within government all point to the immense value of innovation in governance. My government will take further measures to strengthen these gains. As a founding member of the Digital Public Goods Alliance, our country will keep in close view the United Nations Secretary General's vision to realize the potential of digital technologies in advancing human well-being, information and communication. My government, through this august body, has repealed the obnoxious 55-year-old criminal libel law. No journalist is in prison for the practice of journalism. My government is working closely with the Independent Media Commission, the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, and civil society to professionalize and ensure the free, safe, and open practice of journalism in Sierra Leone. As a result of all this, Sierra Leone has made unprecedented progress on the 2021 World Press Freedom Index, moving up 10 places in Africa and the world ranking. The National Telecommunications Commission has improved the regulatory space for telecommunication by passing into law 5 regulations governing licensing, spectrum, quality of service, type approval, and subscriber identification and registration. Mobile voice coverage has increased from 79% in 2018 to about 85% in 2020. Internet penetration has improved from 12% in 2018 to 25% in 2020. There is an upward surge in the use of social media. More media houses, more newspapers, more radio stations, more television stations are operating freely now than at any other time in this nation's history. More places can now boast of community radio stations. The Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation is keeping citizens informed about public affairs and fully involved in governance. Recognizing the ICT telecom and a robust digital infrastructure, recognizing that ICT telecom and robust digital infrastructure are cross-cutting enablers for achieving the priorities set out in the medium-term National Development Plan, my government is expanding the national fiber optic network. My government is establishing, with the support of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the EU, Sierra Leone's first national computer security and incident response center that will create a resilient and safer cyberspace for current and future generations, and especially to combat borderless crimes that are taking a great social, economic, and security toll on nations. A coherent and comprehensive law that supports the safer use of cyberspace and one that is consistent with international best practices is therefore timely. My government has initiated engagements to review the 2011 copyright law, holistically support the development of the music industry, delineate a coherent film policy, and structure the growth of the film industry, and bolster up the development of the creative industries in Sierra Leone. I believe these are massive job creators and incubators for nurturing Sierra Leonean talents and thus further rebrand our nation. Governance reform. The United States of America America's Millennium Cooperation Challenge, has declared Sierra Leone eligible to develop a compact in recognition of our government's performance in investing in people, ruling justly, and economic freedom. Our incremental successes for clamping down on corruption over these 3 successive years indicate that our successes are good for the image and standing of our country. Good for governance, and good for business, and good for development. My government will act to implement necessary legislative and other policy changes to fast-track devolution and local government reform. We are also working to strengthen community mobilization and local council service delivery. This social capital approach keeps citizens informed, and development is community-driven. Foreign policy. Our foreign policy will continue to enhance Sierra Leone's voice, legitimacy, and representation in the international arena. Premised on the thrust of our diplomacy, we have expanded full diplomatic representation to the Republic of Turkey and the Kingdom of Morocco. My government has increased, and we continue to work on increasing the level of representation of our nationals in regional and international organizations, including the International Criminal Court, the African Union, and the United Nations. Mindful of a changing diplomatic landscape, my government, with the support of the People's Republic of China, has turned sought for an ultra-modern foreign service academy to train our diplomats to advance our country's foreign policy. My government continues to deepen relationships with friendly states and international organizations, and Sierra Leone has gained a lot from mutual cooperation and assistance, especially during this period of COVID-19 pandemic, from friendly nations and institutions around the world. Sierra Leone remains deeply committed to multilateralism and to the strengthening of international systems. Sierra Leone remains deeply committed to multilateralism and to the strengthening of the international system and institutions. With our leadership of the African Union Committee of 10 heads of state, Sierra Leone will continue to advocate and canvass the African Common Position on United Nations Security Council reform. Development planning. My government has validated, popularized, and is now implementing the priorities set out in the medium-term National Development Plan. District Development Coordination Committees have been piloted in Karine, Falaba, Bonk, and Pujon districts. In recognition of my government's focused approach to development planning and service delivery using credible data, the World Bank has committed $30 million United States dollars to supporting Statistics Sierra Leone to implement the first electronic midterm population and housing. In recognition of my government's focused approach to development planning and service delivery using credible data, the World Bank has committed $30 million United States dollars to supporting Sierra Leone to implement the first electronic midterm population and housing census in Sierra Leone. Conduct the Sierra Leone Integrated Household Survey, which will generate the latest poverty maps and statistics of Sierra Leone. Design and implement a coherent survey of enterprises in both formal and informal sectors in Sierra Leone to improve enterprise statistics. Design and implement a comprehensive agricultural census, the first in 40 years, followed by an agricultural survey to improve agricultural statistics. Modernize the national accounts and price statistics to a more recent base year so that our GDP and inflation indices will be more consistent with international methodologies, and enhance data accessibility and dissemination at both national and regional levels to ensure that decisions by ministries, departments and agencies and other stakeholders are data-driven. My government also urges all citizens and residents to participate in the nationwide confirmation and registration exercise between May 6 to July 28. The unique multi-purpose national ID card with a national identification number from this exercise will inform national identity database and make it easier to confirm and verify identity, access social services, prevent identity fraud, and ensure transparency and accountability in governance and service delivery. The digitalization of past records of vital events is in progress with support from the Irish Aid, United Nations Development Programme, and the EU. Within the framework of the G7+, Sierra Leone continues to advocate for debt cancellation to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. Sierra Leone also advocates for equitable and widespread access to COVID-19 vaccines if this global scourge is to be defeated. Social protection. My government is committed to achieving a stronger recovery and greater community resilience in the post-COVID-19 period. The National Commission for Social Action, NACSA, activities have revolved mainly around protecting the most vulnerable by building schools and community infrastructure, supporting microfinance and entrepreneurship, boosting agriculture. Infrastructure. My government has argued from the outset that purposeful infrastructural projects will expand the economy, support job creation, and support service delivery right across the country. We have made significant progress in constructing over 200 kilometers of major township and trunk roads in the western area and some parts of the provinces. Among these are the Lumley-Toke Road, the Hillside Bypass Road, Phase 2, the Moyamba Junction and 3 bridges, Old Banajuma Road, the Pendebu Kailan Road, the Boti Konko Road, the Wellington Maishaka Road, Banajuma Mano River Union, and the Lincoln Wing University Regents Road. The great progress that this government has made on each of these well-constructed roads. Work is either in progress or we soon start on additional critical roads in the east end of and central districts and west end of Freetown, Funkia Godrich, Waterloo, Bo Kenima, and Bombs. Regraveling works are underway for 40 selected roads nationwide, totaling to about 1,780 kilometers. These roads are linked by key feeder roads that will enhance connectivity and access to market and services. My government will forward to Parliament a review of the Professional Engineering Registration Act of 1990 to regulate the practice of engineering. When enacted, the law will ensure that quality standards are met at all infrastructural projects, thereby reducing the high public expenditure on works maintenance projects and the safety risk associated with poor quality construction. Government is also working with the European Union and the World Bank to replace 13 cable ferry crossings in the country with modern bridges. In response to the collapse of the Savage Street Bridge in September 2020, my government completed the reconstruction of the bridge and opened it to traffic within 3 months as promised. My government will, in the future, engage much more proactively to prevent such crises. My government is also comprehensively rehabilitating and making disabled-friendly public buildings nationally. My government has successfully planned, designed, and negotiated the reconstruction of the new airport terminal project at Lomé. This $270 million project by the Turkish developer, the Suma Group, will construct a new passenger terminal, a new presidential VIP terminal, a new parallel taxiway to the existing runway, a new air traffic control tower, a new search and rescue and firefighting facility, as well as rehabilitate the existing runway with ultra-modern navigational aids. This is a build, operate, transfer agreement that requires no funding from the government. During the COVID-19 period, this is the largest private Turkish investment in sub-Saharan Africa. For urban road safety, my government is considering installing 7 pedestrian bridges, about 35 traffic lights, and 500 street lights in Freetown. My government has completed the pre-feasibility study of the Lomé Bridge. My government has completed a pre-feasibility study of the Lomé Bridge, and the cable stay design concept has been reviewed to reduce the cost of the bridge to 1.2 billion. A developer to finance the bridge construction has also been identified, and once ratified by Parliament, work will start. for the Sierra Leone Integrated Urban Mobility Project, advanced and public transportation in the Freetown area will be modernized as a consequence. Commuters will soon have a large fleet of buses, including private sector buses, transit terminals, overpass bridges, bus stops, and a large market at Longley. Marine safety and travel have been enhanced with key interventions in jetties, communication, weather forecast, and greater enforcement. Sierra Leone is committed to enhancing global civil aviation safety and security by complying with international civil aviation organization mandatory standards and recommended practices. To improve road safety and the roadworthiness of vehicles, the Ministry of Transport and Aviation, MOT test, and safe driver training and test facilities will be established in district headquarter towns. Government will also develop and enforce a road user policy. In addition to anticipated legislative reforms, government intends to develop a consolidated transportation database to facilitate effective planning, coordination, and communication. The economy, money policy, monetary policy, and trade. Like all other countries globally, Sierra Leone's economy has been adversely affected by the impact of COVID-19. Notwithstanding, the government through the Ministry of Finance continues to implement sound economic policies and public financial management reforms that are geared towards maintaining a stable economy and responding to the financial, socio-economic shocks brought about by the pandemic. While we continue to implement prudent financial management policies focused on enhancing domestic revenue mobilization, rationalizing expenditure, working towards a single-digit inflation, maintaining sustainable debt levels, a stable exchange rate, and increasing reserves to support inclusive growth. Government created a 500 billion special credit facility to support the production, importation, and distribution of essential commodities. The National Revenue Authority deferred taxes due on importation of essential commodities, especially for rice, fuel, and other health supplies. Government's implementation of the National Microfinance Program, MUNAFA, to provide finance to targeted small-medium enterprises. Government also provided cash transfers to over 100,000 poor and vulnerable families and informal sector workers. Government also provided 19 billion in critical financial support for parastatals most affected by the pandemic, including the Sierra Leone Airport Authority, the Sierra Leone Civil Aviation Authority, the Sierra Leone Transport Corporation, and the Sierra Leone Postal Services. Government made advanced payment to keep public works on course and to maintain thousands of jobs in the rehabilitation of trunk roads and township streets. Government also continues to ameliorate the country's current debt situation. The resumption of operations at iron ore mines and slight recoveries in the agricultural and tourism sectors may support an uptick in the economy. Domestic revenue mobilized by the National Revenue Authority increased marginally, and we continue to do so with various revenue-enhancing measures to be implemented by the NRA, including the introduction of the electronic cash register, the international tax administration system, and the efficient implementation of the 2021 Finance Act. International development partners mobilized substantial resources to Sierra Leone in respect of the government's record of commitment to fighting corruption, improving public financial management, and good governance. My government has also undertaken extensive reforms in public financial management, including 1, the automation of revenue collection and management processes by the NRA. 2, strengthening the legal framework for domestic revenue mobilization. 3, strengthening of payroll management. 4, expanding the coverage of the integrated financial management information system. 5, strengthening commitment controls for goods and services expenditures. 6, rolling out the electronic public expenditure tracking survey (PETS) form and regular production of price norm by the National Public Procurement Authority to guide procuring entities. 7, establish an information management system to record, track, monitor, and report on the execution of all government contracts. 8, strengthening the fiduciary oversight of state-owned enterprises, resulting in the reduction of their liabilities. 9, the reconstitution of functional audit committees in 15 MDAs and local councils and strengthening them to follow up on audit recommendations. And 10, continuing to provide real-time financial management guidance to the National COVID-19 Emergency Response Center, NACOVAC. These actions have maintained macroeconomic stability and transparency in public financial management. The Bank of Sierra Leone's astute monetary policy reduced inflation to single digits for the first time in 6 years. Stabilized the exchange rate of the Sierra Leone against regional and major world currencies, and significantly increased international reserves to unprecedented levels. The commercial banking sector has also witnessed robust growth as a consequence of prudent management and policies. In the last 3 years, for instance, our state-owned Roque Commercial Bank and the Sierra Leone Commercial Bank have been transformed from loss-making entities to profit-making banks as a result of massive management and digitalization. Investors who were here in 2018 are still here and doing business in 2021, and even more investors have come to Sierra Leone in the last 3 years. My government will continue to make the investment climate more predictable, flexible, and transparent with pro-business incentives. Local manufacturing has been boosted as a consequence. Even through COVID-19, the Petroleum Regulatory Agency is constructing a second petrol jetty, maintained an open market policy, developed a new tank farm to hold strategic stock, introduced guidelines for downstream activities, maintained price stability based on transparent pricing formula in spite of supply chain disruptions, and significantly improved petroleum revenue and service delivery in the downstream petroleum sector. Mines and mineral resources. Mines and mineral resources. Natural resource extraction has not had the requisite impact on developing our economy. Ineffective legal and regulatory regimes for the sector weakened the state's capacity to generate revenues for its social and economic programs. It further left mining communities poorer and condemned to live with the consequences of environmental degradation and associated problems. In spite of shrinking investment capital and supply chain and logistic constraints as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, the mining sector has remained relatively buoyant. New mining companies have started operations. Our development strategy for the sector includes revising the Mines and Minerals Act to ensure effective governance and transparency in the sector, developing shared infrastructure around mining and optimizing local participation in the sector. Beyond job creation, we want to use proceeds from mining as a catalyst for development. Fisheries. My government has put in place effective fisheries management and governance policies to achieve our sustainable fisheries and biodiversity conservation goals through a strengthened policy and regulatory framework, scientific fish stock assessment and data collection, and deterring and minimizing illegal, unreported, and unregulated activities in our territorial waters. There is now, more than ever before in the history of this country, greater transparency in the fisheries sector. On the website of the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, we now publish a registry of vessels with vessel monitoring systems, fisheries management measures, and revenue generated from licensing, fines, and other charges. My government has improved infrastructure for fisheries development, and access to international markets. I recently commissioned the Sierra Leone Fishing Company's ultra-modern fishing processing facility at Kisi Dockyard that will enhance fish value addition for domestic and international markets. To further boost fish production through aquaculture, government has collaborated with the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, to acquire a fish poultry feed making machine. Under the International Belt and Road Initiative, my government has received $55 million United States as grant from the People's Republic of China to construct a fish harbor and its ancillary structures. Landowners will be fully compensated and all environmental due diligence will be done. The Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources will work with all stakeholders for the effective implementation of the project. When fully operational, the fish harbor will support the growth of the fisheries sector. Environment, sustainability and resilience. Addressing environmental issues is critical for sustainable development. To improve environmental outcomes, government is reviewing and updating various legislation promoting sustainable environmental protection, including national reforestation and timber management initiatives, managing and conserving wetlands, and furthering community-based environmental education. My government believes that a green recovery from COVID-19 is achievable, more sustainable, and in the best interest of our development as a nation. My government will implement a number of binding, nationally appropriate mitigation actions and take necessary measures to support a green growth in all sectors of the economy. We have an opportunity to invest in a green economy that minimizes the environmental impact of biodiversity loss, waste management, and plastic pollution. We will therefore associate closely with all international actions on a green recovery. The National Disaster Management Agency, my government instituted, is fully operational. NACSA has also completed pilot registration of disaster-prone areas of Freetown, Cambia, and Pujeon as part of the disaster preparedness planning. My government will enact the National Reforestation and Timber Governance Agency Act that provides for sustainable forest resource management and reforestation. Sports. My government has reviewed the regulatory and policy instrument for sports development, increased budgetary support to sports, and instituted an operational National Sports Authority to govern and develop sports in Sierra Leone. Just over a week ago, facilitated by the Sierra Leone Football Association leadership, I met with the FIFA and Confederation of African Football Association presidents. The first time in our country's history the president has ever met with both leaders. We discussed sports infrastructure, the development of youth and women's football, technical support and training, and broad support for Sierra Leone's bid to host the African Nations Cup final. My government has signed a memorandum of understanding for the second phase renovation of the National Stadium and all its facilities to international standards. These will include the main bowl, posters, swimming pools, the practice field, an ultra-modern volleyball court, the basketball court, and the tennis court. Public safety and security, immigration, and peacekeeping. My government has completed the first fire stations in Kailan, Pujeon, Western Rural, and Kabbalah. Additional fire stations will be constructed in the coming year in Port Loco, we will purchase additional fire engines, recruit more firefighters, and present to Parliament the first ever fire safety policy and bill. The Office of National Security has conducted vulnerability assessment of all critical national infrastructure, including MDAs and hospitality sites, with a view to identifying security gaps and profiling recommendations. My government has reintroduced visa on arrival to ease travel to Sierra Leone, introduced a comprehensive immigration strategy, and enhanced border patrol and immigration services nationwide. Measures will be presented to enhance secure national infrastructure and borders. My government has strengthened coordination among various agencies to tackle statelessness, deter trafficking in persons, curtail the proliferation of small arms, and prevent the illegal trade in narcotics. Sierra Leone has been commended by the United States Department for its action in interdicting trafficking in persons, charging and convicting offenders. And Sierra Leone has been placed on the second tier of for the first time in this nation's history. Legislation will be presented to consolidate these gains. We are decongesting prisons, and we have invested more in safe, secure, and humane custody of inmates. We have maintained the moratorium on death penalty. My government believes that the death penalty is cruel, inhumane, and unusual. Legislation will be brought forward for the abolition of the death penalty. We have recruited more law enforcement officers, including a large cohort of women, continued professionalizing the police force, and expanding their operation from supporting narcotic and fighting transnational crimes to supporting advocacy and deterrence of sexual and gender-based violence. The Sierra Leone Police is contributing to maintaining world peace with 3 deployments of 239 peacekeepers to 3 missions: UNAMID in Sudan, OBIS in South Sudan, and AMISON in Somalia. My government is also fully committed to enabling the participation of the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces, RSLAF, in maintaining international peace and security. Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces. At the strategic level, my government is developing a defense policy framework that commits the RSLAF to both operating effectively and supporting national development. My government is constructing accommodation facilities, rolling out a 5% salary increment over 3 years, expanding the mandate of the Armed Forces Technical Education College, investing in the Armed Forces Agricultural Unit, and establishing a full-scale Army Engineering Unit. To expand defense cooperation that will enhance the capacity of our armed forces, I have authorized the appointment of defense attachés to our missions in the United Arab Emirates and the Republic of Turkey, labor and social security. My government has harmonized and enforced labor laws, maintained a close eye on worker migration, monitored occupational health and safety, operationalized a centralized employment exchange and a work permit bureau, and successfully arbitrated industrial relations disputes. Following a technical audit, the National Social Security and Insurance Trust, NASIT, will soon appraise its entire portfolio, placements with commercial banks, equity companies, shares and stocks, debentures, and real estate, and new investment opportunities. NASIT services will also migrate to a fully functional, web-based integrated biometric pension operating system. The NASIT Act will soon be reviewed to enhance compliance with best practice in the administration of pension funds and for long-term sustainability of the social security system. Tourism. Tourism is critical to the economic diversification and job creation. In spite of COVID-19, my government has engaged partners and local communities to produce a tourism asset register, develop ecotourism and other tourism products, clean and beautify beaches, provide skills training for entrepreneurs and stakeholders in tourism, and to take other steps to promote tourism in Sierra Leone. All African American brothers and sisters have laid their rightful claim to Sierra Leonean citizenship through genealogy. They bring immeasurable advantages to our country. The homecoming of beauty pageants and the reapplication of the organizers of the Budapest to Freetown rally are solid votes of confidence in our country as a tourist destination. Youth policy. My government sees the youth bulge in Sierra Leone as an opportunity, hence the heavy investment in human capital development at all levels. As a demonstration of this commitment to build the capacity of youth, as a demonstration of that commitment to build the capacity of youth, job creation, and generate new career pathways for youth, my government has revised the national youth policy and developed a 5-year sector strategic plan. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, hundreds of youths have been engaged in various farming activities, trained in various entrepreneurial and business management skills. And government has worked with development partners on employment promotion initiatives. Youth population have been involved in the de-risking initiatives, anti-SGBV campaigns, and in civic engagement on peace consolidation, violence, and drug abuse. My government constructed and fitted 70 fishing boats with outboard engines, navigational equipment, and accessories at a total of 5.5 billion leones to support youth employment and empowerment in 7 coastal districts and communities. To support youth livelihood skills, my government has constructed 10 car wash centers in the western area. A further 28 car wash centers are being constructed nationwide. This initiative will create households for thousands of jobs for the youth in this country. To date, the National Youth Service has trained and deployed over 1,000 graduates as Service Corps to NDAs for internship opportunities. Several youth training programs will focus on providing disadvantaged young women and girls with digital learning and resource center where they will acquire skills in entrepreneurship, financial literacy, transformational leadership, and social change and business startup funds. Increasing energy access. My government sees vigorous energy sector reform as critical to economic growth, health, and social well-being. More households are now connected to the grid than in 2018. We have increased electricity generation and transmission capacity over the last year. We will augment generation capacity with 87 megawatts of confirmed investment in the sector. And we will soon commission a 6 megawatt solar park in Newton. Electricity supply has been restored to Lunsa. 39 communities are to be electrified along the CLSG West African Post 225 kV transmission network, including Zibi and Poturu in the south, Kakamankuram and Jayama in the east, Nimikoro included, and Masimbi, Bumbuna, Matutuka, Kamalu, Kamakiri, Inkoro, Paluku in the north. We now generate sufficient electricity in Freetown. But we inherited a defective decadent transmission and distribution system that is incapable of evacuating and transmitting power that is generated. This is made worse by the deliberate vandalization by ill-motivated citizens of transformers and installed equipment. Therefore, let me state that citizens who are engaged in such vandalization activities will face the full force of the law. With support from the World Bank, my government is currently addressing the perennial problem of load shedding and massive inefficiencies in the power evacuation and distribution in Freetown by expanding or upgrading the 33 kV, 11 kV grid in Freetown. Distribution transformers and lines are also being installed in 33 unserved communities. The vendor supply process for electricity meters means meters are now easily available. In collaboration with partners, we have commissioned 50 rural mini-grids and 4 smaller pilot systems in 54 chiefdoms, with 8,000 household connections in beneficiary communities, and another 44 mini-grids are being developed in 44 chiefdoms in the country. Planning and rural electrification units have been set up to supervise rural electrification activities, develop regulations, and develop cost-reflective tariffs. The electrification of 7 district towns, Kabala, Kambia, Moyamba, Kailam, Pujeong, Bong and Matru is well underway. Phase 2 expansion of the Bumbuna electricity dam is also in progress. Access to water. My government will present legislation for the better management of interventions in the water and sanitation sector. Additional measures have been developed for dam safety, water use and catchments, groundwater use, pollution control, water consumer services, and service provider reporting rules. With support from the World Bank, my government is rehabilitating the water treatment plant at Babadori Dam and installing a 4-kilometer distribution network for improving water supply to Bangbaila, Malema, and Kaningo communities. With funding support from the Millennium Challenge Corporation, we have started universal water metering in the western area with near completion of water kiosks, 5 in Aberdeen and 6 in Kintown, and the installation of 5 kilometers of distribution pipelines. Government is also installing gravity-fed water systems across several communities in Waterloo, Mambo, and Hamilton, and additional gravity-fed water systems in Kono, Kwenadugu that will serve thousands of citizens. Government has procured 13 Bowsers to support community water supply efforts in poorly served areas in Freetown during the dry season months. A 6-tank rural water supply project funded by my government will benefit 1.5 million citizens around the country. It will rehabilitate, optimize, and expand existing water facilities such as water intakes, treatment plants, transmission mains, distribution networks, and metering. Solar-powered boreholes with stand posts and distribution lines have been installed in various communities to serve thousands of people. More measures will be taken to increase access to potable water. Land reform and housing. My government believes that land reform should focus on legally framing and safeguarding rights within the context of tension between formal and informal customary rights, streamlining and modernizing land delivery, encouraging the sustainable use of land and responsible investment, maintaining a coherent database of all land, and providing fair mechanism for land dispute resolutions. My government's position is that Sierra Leoneans who wish to invest in land should have land available to them without hindrance or discrimination. My government intends to tackle the urban housing problem by using a private sector-led ecosystem of reforms, innovative designs, and financing reforms. Safe and affordable housing is supportive of human capital development priorities and aligns with our country's aspirations to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 11. National cohesion and democracy. Legislation that establishes an independent commission for peace and national cohesion has been ratified. The National Commission for Democracy and the National Council for Civic Education and Development are leading on civic-oriented activities aimed at fostering good citizenship that is favorable to the functioning of our democracy. The National Electoral Commission has developed a strategic plan with 10 pillars that support transparent and credible elections within international best practices. Sierra Leone can further strengthen and consolidate its democracy with minority populations and communities when minority populations and communities are represented. Measures will be considered for making our democracy more inclusive and more representative. The government has constituted a technical review of the white paper on Justice Kawan Constitutional Review Committee. Key provisions that strengthen our democracy and protect human and constitutional rights of citizens will be fully considered. Institutional effectiveness and reform. Government remains committed to strengthening public sector institutions and public service delivery. A public service bill will be brought forward and my government will review the Civil Service Code. In the changing world of technology, government remains committed to automating the recruitment to retirement process of personnel across 80% of the civil service. To enhance institutional effectiveness, the Ministry of Planning and Development will normalize performance management assessments to include departments, agencies, parastatals, and state-owned enterprises. Management and structural reviews of MDAs have been undertaken with a view to proposing necessary strategic alignment. There is progress on establishing a wage and compensation commission. Judiciary, justice sector reform. Every citizen should benefit from a fair, impartial, and effective justice system. My government has supported the appointment of 15 more High Court judges and 11 more magistrates. There are now regular High Court criminal sessions in Pujeong, Tonkolili, Bonth, Cambia, Kwenadugu, Kailam, Moyamba, Putloko, and Kono districts. More qualified women now serve in senior management positions in the judiciary. These include the Master and Registrar, Court Operations Manager, Human Resource Manager, Deputy Master and Registrar, Court of Appeal Registrar. Added to them are 2 female judges in the Supreme Court, 5 in the Court of Appeal, and 5 in the High Court. Through constitutional review, the High Court has been divided into 8 divisions with 3 specialized courts adjudicating corruption cases, dealing with industrial and social security disputes, and handling sexual offenses cases. Digitalization of court processes is ongoing. Caseloads are now lower, and prosecution and conviction rates have improved in all courts. My government has improved the landscape for commercial law by acceding to international instruments. The Small Claims Commercial Court has been set up to fast-track cases in magistrate courts with claims of under 50 million leones. Gender, women's empowerment, LGBT, social welfare, and human rights. My government will take more action to protect especially women and girls from sexual and gender-based violence. The Child Rights Act of 2007 will be updated, and a national street children strategy will be presented. More measures to concretize and operationalize the gender equality and women's empowerment policy will be presented. Over the coming year, women's empowerment programs will be a priority. As a consequence of our concerted action to fight SGBV, Sierra Leone is now among 9 countries in the world to serve as board member for the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Compact. Sierra Leone has also clinched the presidency of the UN Women Board, a UN entity for gender equality and women's empowerment. My government has also consented to sponsor a UN resolution on a survivor's bill of rights for sexual and gender-based violence. Measures to address disability, including addressing stigma and discrimination, inclusive education, socio-economic empowerment, innovation and technology, disaggregated data, and women with disability will be presented. We will also act to maintain and improve on our enviable global reputation for peaceful interfaith coexistence and religious tolerance. Mr. Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, additional measures will be laid before you. I implore us all, on the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the independence of this nation, to unite our country around values of discipline, fairness, equal access, equal opportunity, respect for diversity, and more that makes us Sierra Leonean. On that note, may God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant us wisdom and grace during this legislative session. Thank you all. God bless you all, especially you on this side. God bless you. Thank you.
It's not for long.
Distinguished guests, His Excellency the President, we want to thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And thank you, sir. The Honorable Vice President, Mr. Speaker, my Lord the Chief Justice, Her Excellency the First Lady, Ministers and Deputy Ministers of Government, honorable members of this distinguished House, Your Worship the Mayor of Freetown, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency's address will now be received by the Leader of Government Business. He laid on the table of this House for a 5-day debate on the motion of thanks to His Excellency the President. May I now invite the Honorable Matthew Sir. Thank you very much, the Honorable Leader of this House. The Honorable Vice President, sir, Mr. Speaker, my Lord the Chief Justice, the First Lady of the Republic, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members of Parliament, Your Worship the Mayor, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, after the national anthem, His Excellency the President will leave the chamber. He will be accompanied by Mr. Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, the Majority Leader, the Leader of the Opposition, together with the Honorable Vice President and the First Lady. And His Excellency the President will leave for the Speaker's suite. So, honorable members, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, immediately after the national anthem, the respected Excellency the President, the Honorable Vice President, the First Lady, accompanied by the Speaker, the leaders, please patiently wait in your places for Mr. Speaker to return and adjourn this sitting of the House. Please wait in your respective seats. Exactly. I thank you.